was 2 weeks away from graduating high school, and she says, she called me over to her car. I went over there, and she says, I have to tell you something. I looked at her. I go, well, what is it? She says, well, I'm your mother. I go, you know, my mom? I go, my mom's at home. And no, I'm your mom. And I said, well, who's my father?
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess-ups, make-ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to episode 60 of Fatherhood Voices. Now, today I have a special guest because this was actually guest number one. And Alphonso was the first guest, but because of some technical difficulties, that episode never aired. So now, fast forward a year and a half later, and what better than to reintroduce him for episode 60 after we reach the milestone in season 2. Alphonso, welcome to Fatherhood Voices.
Thank you.
So I'm excited to share with the audience your story, a little bit about where you were raised and so forth. But I'm going to throw the hook out there because there's something very interesting that happened. It's just in the last 2 years that a family secret was unraveled. And in that time, you found out that your mom wasn't your mom.
Right.
And then you found out your dad wasn't your dad. Right. So I'm sure that was a big earth crashing revelation that happened. And I'm sure it caused a lot of turmoil. And we're going to dive into that a little bit later because this is something that's happening more and more as these different tests, you know, Me21 and Ancestry and so forth, as people are starting to become more comfortable with taking these DNA tests, they're unraveling a lot of family secrets.
Right. And
this is one that we're gonna touch on. But first, I just want to find out a little bit about who Alphonso is. You know, where you grew up at, and what did your child life look like?
Well, I grew up in Monrovia with my beautiful family, my Sanchez family, and I was raised by my mom. I love my mom. That's the only mom I identify with. You know, she's my mom. She's my heart. And so you know, little kid, and you know, grew up like everybody else. I mean, we were poor, struggled, but
now, when you say you were poor, what did that look like? What year? What was it, in the 60s or the 70s?
Oh, that was the 60s. I was born in 61, so
okay.
60s and 70s. And, well, you know, my mom that raised me, I thought she was my mom. And the guy who I thought was my father, which was her husband, left us when I was 5 years old. No, I was 3 years old, I'm sorry. And so my mom, she never worked in her life because she was handicapped. And we didn't have a lot of income. But, you know, it was a struggle. My mom's sons, what I call my brothers, Arthur.
How many brothers and sisters?
Well, I was raised with, there was actually 10 boys. I'm sorry, 7 boys and 3 girls. 10
wow.
10 of us all together. And all, you know, I thought they were my brothers and sisters. And, but, you know, my brother Arthur helped us a lot financially. He helped my mom, and you know, so it was a struggle. You know, we had no car, nothing.
Did you no, because your mom was disabled? Did she work or get any type of assistance?
No, well, we got assistance. You know, we say the LA County Welfare Department was my daddy. So
it's
yeah,
a lot of daddies, believe it or not.
Yeah. So, anyways, basically, you know, we grew up in a house that. You know, there was no air conditioning, no heating. You know, we just warm the house up with a stove, in the oven, pilot.
With the brick?
Yeah. So, you know, but you know what? It's the experience that I had growing up shaped me, shaped my life, you know, and I am who I am as a result of it. And I don't think I'm a bad person. I think I'm a better person for it, for that
now,
experience.
Let me ask you a question. When you were growing up in elementary school or even junior high school, did you know you were poor?
Did I know I was what?
Poor.
Yeah. I knew I was poor.
Well, how did you know? Did you not have things that other kids? Did you have to wear, like,
you know,
used clothes? Or?
You know, my mom always struggled to save to buy us shoes, two pairs of shoes, and some, maybe four or five pairs of pants and shirts, and throughout, for school year, So as soon as we finished 1 year of school, I mean, she saved and saved, and then about a week before school started, we went to Zodi's or some
Mm.
J.C. Penney's, and my mom, she bought us those things, and um, so it was shoes for me. It was like, okay, you wear them out by the end of the year. I mean, we had holes in our shoes, and summertime we went barefooted most of the time. But I mean, it's just I just thought that was it. That was a part of life, But I went to an all white school, and
In
all
Monrovia,
in Monrovia. Yeah, it
really?
was really, really weird because I don't know. I think there's like six elementary schools at the time. I went to school. There was a school called Huntington School, and that's where all the black and Latino kids went, mostly black. But then, but right around the time I was starting school, it was so full that they sent us about a mile the other way
Mm.
to an all white school. And then around 1970, they closed the school down and desegregated, and that's when more um, minorities were started coming to the school.
Now, did you experience racism when you got shipped off to the all-white school?
Oh, well, yes, and mostly I think the teachers, because I was in fourth grade, and I remember this one teacher used to come around and get the Mexican kids, a few Mexican kids that were there. There was no black kids yet, and a few white kids, and so they used to take us to class and have us identify like ink blots. What is that? What
Mm,
does that look
yes.
like? And draw lines between lines, and it's reward us with little trinkets.
Mhm.
So as a kid, you don't think of anything that's anything wrong with it. I thought it was fun time. I get a little trinket for to draw some lines or to identify a picture.
Mhm.
Um, but later on, in life, I started thinking back, and I said, wow, the white kids that were there, they were really poor, the poor ones,
Ah.
and then I don't know, they were analyzing us, Um, but in school, I mean, elementary school, no, I didn't experience any racism. It wasn't until uh, they desegregated that one school, they closed it down, and they sent all the black kids and Mexican kids to the elementary school, and then they're coming to school, and some of the white kids I went to school with, they were like, terrified of the black kids. I'm like, well, that's only so and so, those are my friends, they're fine. But I don't know what went through their minds about why they were afraid.
Yeah.
But then that was the first time I experienced having more minorities around me in school. But I went to the all white school before that, before they integrated it, and go home and play with all the black kids. And I didn't think anything was wrong with it. With that, I mean, that's just the way it was.
Now, let me ask you a question. So, um, you said your dad left when you were five. Well, your dad at that time.
The guy that I thought was my
Yes.
father, yes.
So, and then how was that growing up? Now you have your mom by herself, and then you have 10 siblings.
Yeah.
And then are you guys all about the same age?
No, I was actually second to the youngest.
Okay, so they'd already kind of passed through.
Yeah, they were some of what I thought was my brothers. They had already got married, moved out. So I was there with my mom, my brother Mario, my brother Steven, Danny, and my two sisters, Andy and Helen. And so we all lived together, grew up. I mean, I saw them as my brothers and sisters, and
Well,
that's it. And
okay,
I
so let
still
me
love them.
let me question every question about that because you keep saying um, who I thought were my brothers. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Hmm.
Do you have to be blood to be brothers and sisters? Or can you be, do you have to be of blood, of the same blood? Or can they be your brothers and sisters?
Not for me. I mean,
Okay.
they're my brothers and sisters no matter
Okay.
what. I mean, um, just like any siblings, you have issues. Then but they're still my brothers and sisters, and I still
Okay.
love them. Yeah.
Okay. And same thing with mothers and fathers. Do they have to be
No,
your blood?
no,
Because there's a fine line. Some people draw that line and saying, if we're not blood,
no.
I'm not. You're not my father. But
Yeah,
then other people say, no. If you were there for me and you
yeah,
raised me, then
right.
you are my father.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't have a father figure growing up. But my mom is my mother and my father,
I can
growing
relate.
up, and I love her with all my heart, and I wouldn't change anything about the way I grew up.
What's one memory that, if you can just think of one memory that you wish you would have had a father figure there when you were in
Um,
elementary school or junior high school? Like, what do
well,
you miss
growing
out on?
up, I wanted to play sports. It would have been nice to have a father around, and but I first of all, we couldn't even afford physical for football or afford the jersey, the uniforms or anything for baseball. So I never got into organized sports. Of course, you play sports in the neighborhood and at the parks and everything with all the kids, and so that was about what I did as far as sports.
So the sports is part of the one thing. If you could go back in a
Yeah,
time, is that one
right,
that there, and then more than likely, if the father at the time was in your life,
right,
there would have been a strong possibility that there would have been money to be able to allow for the
yes,
physical and to be able to participate in some sports.
right,
So you missed out on that
yeah,
camaraderie
you're right,
in like the structured environment, like in the schools
right,
and the leagues outside of school.
right,
Okay. And it's funny because sports have gotten very expensive. You know, these little leagues and travel balls and so forth.
right,
It's hard for me,
yeah,
especially like I said, with these times now.
right,
It's hard for parents to
yeah,
come up with, the fees not only for the physicals,
right,
but the equipment.
right.
A lot of times registration. So a lot of kids are experiencing this right now where they're not able to unless they're doing it at school and there's help available. They're not able to, and they miss
Right.
out on those opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, so I didn't play any organized sports, and another thing I wanted to all the kids used to come to school dressed up in their Cub Scout and Boy Scout uniforms,
Mm.
and that's something I wanted to do, but I didn't never got involved with that because we couldn't afford it, and then we I don't know it that's fine. Hell, I'm alive today.
Well, let me ask a question. So, as
Didn't
as a
kill me.
as a father, did you do the opposite? Did you make sure that when your son was here, um, and you had two boys, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and one that passed.
yes.
Okay, and your son that's still here, were you involved in his life and got him involved in sports and all the things that you missed out on?
Of course, I'm involved with his life from the very beginning. Every day I'm home, and whatever he wanted to do, I was encouraged it. If he wanted to play sports, I was there for him. If he played basketball, and I mean, but he wasn't really interested in sports much. He ran track a couple of years, I believe it, well, when he was little, and then Damien. But Yeah, anything that he wanted to get involved with, I was there for him to support and anything. And of course, I try to fulfill every need that he had, and food, clothing. I mean, I was there for him. I'm his dad.
If there's one thing you could tell fathers right now that are not in their children's lives, and a lot of times it's because they're fighting with the mother. So because they're fighting, they're choosing to use the son or daughter as kind of a pawn, and even though in the end they're hurting their son or daughter, they're staying out of their life. Because I'm actually working with people who are refusing to participate in their children's lives because of the fighting that's going on over child support or over custody.
Yeah.
What would you say to these
Well,
dads that are missing out?
I would say, put all that aside, as much time you can with your kids, and just love them, and try not to let that interfere with your relationship.
So not having a dad in your life, so then did your mom at the time, did she ever remarry or
No, my
No.
mom never had a relationship after her husband left her. So we didn't have to deal with any of that. Uh, you know, it's just the way it was. She never had anyone uh, after that. Stayed
Did
single.
did any of your brothers step in to kind of take on that father role, or was everybody kind of consumed with their own lives?
Well, I had my brother Arthur. He was like a father to me. I used to go to his house a lot, hang out with his kids, which I believe were my nephews, which they still are, no matter what.
Yes.
We're not blood related, but uh, they're still my nephews, no matter what. And Arthur was I love my brother Arthur. And like I said, if anybody was even remotely close to being a father, it was Arthur. And he was always there. I mean, if we were hungry, he would always, you know, bring food home, give my mom money. So he helped out quite a bit. And then, my sisters, Andy and Helen, when they got older, when they were able to, get have a source of income, they took care of my mom too. And I did as well. And I got older, the very first paycheck I got, I gave my mom money.
Wow.
And even when I got married, I told my wife, I said, I give my mom money and I'm going to continue to do that. And she encouraged that. And she goes, that's what I love about you.
Wow.
And so I always did. I always took care of my mom.
So not having a father in your life, and as you go into high school and you start dating, and how did that hinder your growth? How did you have any complications along the way?
No,
Um,
no, you know what? Like I said, my mom, like I said, to me, she played both roles, mother, father. She gave me good advice. She always taught me right from wrong. And, so no, it really didn't complicate anything. Well, the first real love that I ever had in my life was Melody, which is my wife now. And
wow.
I met her when she just turned 17 and I just turned 18. And that's when we got together and we've been together ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who taught you about how to treat a woman?
How did I what?
Who taught you how to treat a woman?
Well, my mom. And then also it comes from the heart. You want to I mean, if you love a woman, you're going to treat her nice, you know? So I don't know if there's instructions for that. I just like raising a child. Um, I never had a father to show me how to raise a child, but it comes from your heart. It's You do things because you love your child, and you do things because you love your girlfriend or your wife. You know, so it comes from the heart.
A lot of men nowadays, they have a closed heart, so they don't know how to love. They don't know how to
Yeah,
love themselves, so they can't love anybody else.
yeah,
So it causes these toxicity in these
yeah.
relationships. Who taught you about sex?
About what?
Who taught you about sex?
Sex?
Yeah. Who taught you about the sex?
Uh, uh, I don't know. There was no book for that either.
And I know we said it, we joke about it, but it's a topic that really needs to be talked about.
Yeah,
Parents, they're so quick to like, oh, well,
mm,
we'll just learn it in school.
yeah,
But it's important because younger kids are having babies,
yeah,
13 years old, 14
yeah,
years old. So, we have to have these talks with our children.
yeah,
And even though it's uncomfortable and it shouldn't be uncomfortable,
yeah.
it's a natural part of life,
I,
but all joking aside, it's, you know,
I don't think I ever spoke to my son about that. How'd you learn, son? No.
Yeah, we actually sat our daughters down and showed them YouTube videos. And then me and her mom, and then yeah, funny little cartoon
Yeah,
videos and
yeah,
the
yeah,
pokey pokey and
yeah,
the
yeah.
okey okey. Yeah, so
Oh, that's
like,
funny.
oh my goodness.
But
Okay, so
I was a novice. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I think me and my wife we learned together.
oh man. So now you're going through life, so you're working and you had a great career with the county
Well, the state.
for the state. Okay,
Yeah.
great career with the
Hmm.
state, and you were able to provide for your family? How did that show? Were you able to provide, or did you run across hard times?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, me and my wife both we worked for the state,
Okay.
and so we both worked at it together. And of course, our number one priority was my son and to have a home. The one thing me and my wife wanted to make sure we had a stable home because she was always moving around from apartment to apartment with her mom. Her mom was she was a single mom, so it was just Melody and her mom. And we talked about that when we were dating. That's something we wanted to do, and we always talked about education. Went to public schools; they weren't the best, and we used to talk about we get married and we have a child that we wanted to send them to the better schools. So that's what we did. That was those were our number one priorities: to raise our son right, send him to good schools, and he went to private schools all his life.
Well, here's a question for you, and I want you to really think about this question. And I'll use myself as an example. I provided a home for
Hmm.
my family, a stable home, but I didn't provide an emotional safe space for them. So my question to you is, growing up, did you provide your son and your family a safe space?
Yes, I did. And I will always continue to do that with him. I mean, if he's experiencing tough times, he's always got a home. Always got a home. Yeah, no, like I said, it's my number one priority is my family. That's it. I'm a family guy. I go to work, I come home, and I take care of my family. I don't go to bars and hang out with the guys and drink and come home drunk. I don't do that stuff. I never have. Um, my my son and my wife is my life, and I enjoy being home with them. And I want to be home with them I'm home by myself and they're gone. I'm like,
But do
okay,
they want to be home with you? That's the question. You know?
yeah. So, but no, and yeah. So I had never had any issues with that. I mean, like I said, I live for my family. I work for my family.
So do you think that's a secret right there? You live for your family because I think there's a lot of wisdom there because, I know you just say like, well, I work for my family, I live for my family. There's a lot of men that don't. They live for themselves. They live for partying. They live
Yeah,
for
no,
other
no,
women. They live for, work and toxicity and so
yeah,
forth. So I think you just dropped a golden nugget. Is you right there saying, I've given my life to my family. I've given my life to my wife and
right.
and my son, and
I
that's power right there because a lot of men aren't showing up.
right. No, you know what? I always, like I said, I always wanted to be a dad because that's something that I didn't have. And Melody, my wife, she didn't have a father, and so we had that commonality that we shared. And again, the stability thing, that's something we both wanted. We wanted to be good parents.
But how did you know you wanted to be a dad? I know you didn't have dad present, but
Oh,
but how did you know? You just
well, I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, there was times where I see other kids that had fathers, and I was envious of that. And then I remember Father's Day
hmm,
with some of my buddies growing up. They used celebrating Father's Day, and I would feel bad because I felt kind of left out. And emotionally, it hit me a few times when I was a kid. And like I said, I never knew what it was like to have a dad, but I wanted to make sure that my son had a father.
let me ask a question about that. So because there's a lot of children out there that don't have fathers, either because they passed away or they chosen not to be in their life. Was there anybody, an uncle, a neighbor, somebody that stepped in to kind of? I know you said your older brother, like later on in life, but when you were a child, was there anybody that stepped in to kind of take on that figure of a father, an uncle, a grandfather, a neighbor, friend of one of your friends' fathers?
No, like I said, my brother Arthur was there. I mean, I used to spend a lot of time with him at his house.
How old were you
Oh,
when
I
you?
was about I don't know, I started maybe 9 or 10 years
Okay,
old.
so you were still a child, and so
Yeah.
he started taking on that role.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Well, I don't know if he'd taken on that role, but he was my big brother. But I felt that if anybody was remotely close to being my father, it was him because uh, I love being around him. I love being around his kids. I mean, he used to put us in his truck and take us places, little parks and stuff. So, like I said, and yeah, he was the one. He was my brother Arthur.
How's your relationship with your brother?
Well, my brother passed away
We
years
did.
ago. Yeah, he was 56 when he passed. And he's a lot older than me. He's, I don't know, he was about 13, 14 years older
Okay.
than me, 15 maybe. So, but anyways,
Did
yeah,
you ever have that talk with him and say like, "Hey, thank you for stepping in"?
no, I never did. I never had that. I just, kept it myself and I felt it in my heart. And when I had that, had conversation with my wife, I tell her, well, the person that I thought was, would be a good father figure would be my brother Art.
Do you wish you would have had that conversation to let him know?
Yeah, yeah. I love my brother. He knows I love him very much, and so yeah, I miss him very much.
Mm.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Aloha Imports, the sprays that make your worst smelling secrets disappear. Listen, I love people, but I don't love their shoes or their oops, I ate a burrito bathroom breaks. And I really don't love pretending I don't smell it. That's why I keep Aloha Imports products in the house, in my car, honestly, probably in every bag I own. They've got Sweet Feet for foot funk, Shoe Fly for that one pesky fly, Smoke Off for smoke clouds that linger like your last situationship, and Crapper Zapper for the bathroom situation. You know the one. Aloha Imports doesn't cover it up with flowers and lies. They end it, silently, like a tropical ninja with a vendetta. So if you live with roommates, pets, or anyone who eats food and then, processes that food, you need this. Go to alohaimports.com, stock up, and enjoy living in a house that doesn't smell like a regret.
So fast forward about 2, 3 years ago, you're minding your own business, sitting down, watching TV, and your son decides to start fucking around with this ancestry bullshit that is destroying families all over the world.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Well,
Because
that
so he went and sent his DNA off and he comes and what is that conversation like? He was sitting there watching TV and what happens?
well, actually, let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
It was about November of 2022,
Okay.
and he did ancestry. Years ago, I did 23andMe, but you do it, you look at it, you don't go back and look at that stuff.
Okay.
But he says, "Hey, Dad," he goes, Sanchez is on here, and I go, "Well, maybe they didn't do it." And then he goes, "But wait a minute, there's all these people called Chandler. They're, he goes, and they share a lot of DNA with us. I'm looking at that, and he goes, I'm gonna look into. I said, no, don't look into it. And Melody, my wife, Melody, and Christian and I were having a conversation. I just leave it alone. I don't want to go there. I didn't want
Were
to
you
open up
were
a
you
can of worms.
afraid that something might unravel?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
kind of think there
I
was
was
something?
afraid, and I really didn't want to face it at the time. I just told him, let it go. And my wife told Christian, no, just look, keep going, son, keep looking.
Wow.
So, about a week or two went by, and I was kind of warming up to it, and then he says, Dad, he goes, it was that night, it was Saturday night, about midnight. He says, Dad, he goes, look at this old man, his name is William Henry Chandler. He's a botanist, and he goes, I think he's your great grandfather. I go, nah, he don't look like me. And then he goes, no. I said, is he on that the list of the DNA thing, with
Uh-huh.
Chandler's? He goes, no. I said, well, he's not related to me. And then about a half hour later, comes back, hey, Dad, there's this woman here. Her name is Carmen Chandler, and she's like a media affairs director out there in Cal State Northridge, and here's her email. And she looks like you. I'm like, oh my god, she kind of looks like me. Son, I think you're onto something. Comes back 20 minutes later. He says, Dad, he goes, look at this guy here. His name is Bill Chandler. I said, oh shit, son. I said, he looks like me. I said, where'd you find this? And he goes, look, he's got an email address, and he's part of this organization called Mississippi Immigrants' Rights Alliance. He founded it, and I'm like, wow, And then he comes back 10 minutes later, and he says, Dad, look at this. He goes, I found this on YouTube, and it says Bill Chandler, 80 years, 80 photos. And I'm looking, I said, oh my god. I'm looking at all these pictures, and I see Carmen Chandler, and I said, oh my god. I said, I think they're related to me. And then, I'm looking at a resemblance, kind of a strong resemblance from me and my sister Carmen and my father. And I see all these boys in there, these three other boys. I'm like, and I see all just family members, So
Are you upset? Are
no,
you
no, no,
no? Are you
no, I'm not upset at all. At
okay?
first, when
So you weren't upset at your son?
I got, my emotions got the best of me at the time because once I found out that they're related to me, and then I discovered that I wasn't even blood related to the family I grew up with, I had an emotional breakdown. I just, oh my God, um, only because my mom that raised me, I believe she was my mom. Then I was 18 years old. This lady named Virginia pulls up. I was 2 weeks away from graduating high school, and she says, she called me over to her car. I went over there, and she says, I have to tell you something. I looked at her. I go, well, what is it? She says, well, I'm your mother. I go, you're not my mom. I go, my mom's at home. And no, I'm your mom. And I said, well, who's my father? Paul, I said, that's my big brother. The big brother I seen every 6 months or so that brought a little Pepsi Cola to my mom and left and didn't do nothing. Never gave my mom anything. And I was like, what the hell? So that blew me away. I mean,
So she showed up when you were 18, but you
yes,
just dismissed it and
no, I didn't dismiss it. I mean, I was upset. I was
okay.
mad, and I basically cussed her out and told her to leave, and I was upset.
So you found out at 18
I was
that your mom
18.
was okay.
She
So
came to
you
me.
okay.
Yeah.
So you found out at 18 that your mom was your mom. Did you ever have that conversation with your mom, with the
Well,
mom that raised you?
yes, I did. But what happened was she gave me her number and I threw it in the ground. I was so upset.
Okay.
I go to school. A couple of days later, a real nice teacher named Mr. Sullivan. He came up to me, a young guy. He come up to me and he says, "Hey, what's going on?" And I told him. He goes, "Oh my God!" He goes, "You need to go back and get that number, call and apologize for your behavior. You need to face that." So I did. I went. I had a moped at the time. I rode like about 2 or 3 miles to where I was hanging out at, and
You found it.
I found the phone number, and
Wow.
then I came back to the school and I called her from the payphones there, and I apologized to her, for my behavior, and I said, I need to know what's going on. I need to, do I have family? Yes, you do. So that Saturday, we she made arrangements to pick us up at Monrovia Rec Park. So I took, my brother Mario was with us. He brought a girlfriend with him, and then I had a couple of buddies of mine. I didn't know what was going on. I needed some backup. So, anyways, so we went and we met them, and they lived in some projects called the Highlands
Okay.
in El Sereno. So I didn't know anything about projects. I'm 18 years old. I never, hell, barely got out of Monrovia, And so, anyways, uh, there was three girls that she had and two boys. And like I said, I was 18 at the time. My brother Mario, which uh, is her son too. She's biological mother to both me and my brother Mario. I grew up with Mario. And anyways, he was 17, and her oldest son at the time, his name was Joey. He was 14, and then there was Manuel. He was 11, And then there was Eileen.
So you went to the apartment, you had that meeting. How did that go?
Um, Kind of a shock, and they all knew of me and they were hugging me, the little girls and boys, I'm like, and I didn't know anything about them, this is the first time I ever met them, and it was just all overwhelming for me, I was like, wow, Then I met her sister named Stella. I said, oh my God, it started coming back to me. I remember this lady named Auntie Stella.
Mm.
And when I was a little kid, and I could never, when I got older, I remember the name of it. I just like, who is this lady? I remember asking my mom, who's this lady? And she said, I don't know, but the reason why I remember that name is because when I was a little kid, she came and she walked me up Myrtle Avenue in Monrovia. There's a little Florsheim shoe store that was there in the corner of Lemon and Myrtle, and it's still there. That shoe store's still there. She walked me there and she bought me some shoes. She said, "Do you like those shoes?" Now, I'm looking through the glass window. Oh, yeah. And so we went in there. She bought me those shoes, and I remember the box. It was a blue box with a rocket ship on it. And I remember going home. She dropped me off. And the reason why I remember all that is because my mom kept the shoe box and she put all her papers in it, and she had it locked up in a little cabinet. So every time she opened the cabinet, I see the shoebox. That would remind me of that time that this lady named Auntie Stella took me to buy shoes. And so it triggered that memory again.
So how did you ever have the conversation with your real mom about why she?
Yes, I
What did
did.
that look like?
Well, she said, and I asked her, I said, well, who's my father? She said Paul, but she was lying to me.
She was lying.
And
Why did she drop? Why did she leave you with the other
well, okay, so what happened was she got pregnant,
man? Okay.
and apparently she had met Paul, and she fell in love with him, I guess, and she went with him. And at the time, Virginia, biological mother, was engaged to my biological father, Bill Chandler, and they were going to get married. And Paul met Virginia. He told me he met her on the bus. And so he started coming around. And Paul knew that Virginia and Bill were together. But
So he swooped in and swooped off her feet,
yeah,
and
he started messing around with Virginia.
okay.
And then Bill found out.
So he's gone.
And then they broke up.
So then, how did you end up with?
Okay,
No.
so what happened was, now she's pregnant, and she tells Paul, "You're the father." So the way when I met my biological father, Bill, he says that when they broke up, she moved. He thought maybe to Arcadia or Monrovia or someplace, but he wasn't sure. He had a female friend that.
But wait, let me just. How did you end up with?
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay,
Okay. So he had Virginia and Bill had a mutual female friend. And the female friend told Bill, I saw Virginia and she's pregnant. She says, can you ask her if that child is mine? So she came back and said, no, Virginia said it belongs to Paul. So she had me at St. Anne's maternity home in LA. She was going to give me up for adoption. That's the conversation I had with her. I said, where was I born? I always thought I was born in LA County like every Mexican, right? So, and I used to ask my mom, Mom, where was I born? LA County General Hospital,
Okay.
right? So that's what I thought.
So you're born, and then how do you?
Okay,
Get...
so she was going to give me up for adoption. And she said she didn't have the heart to do it.
Okay.
So she hid the pregnancy from her grandparents that she was raised with. And from what I understand, she came from a pretty bad off family, her mother.
So how did you end up with your mom?
Oh, okay.
I just want to get to that point.
Okay, so
I don't want to hear no part. The fucking audience wants to know how you got there.
All right. Well, look,
She dropped you off with how old were you?
No. She did not want to take me home because she was hiding the pregnancy.
Get it?
Okay. So I don't know how she ended up there, but
Okay.
I'm sure Paul picked her up and took her there.
Okay.
Okay. And then, so she lived there at my mom's house with me. And then, from what I understand, she moved out with Paul. They rented a room at this house, maybe half a block away. And she was working and was doing electronics early
So now
on.
you're living with
Okay,
the
no,
mom.
I'm living with Virginia
Okay.
and Paul in this one.
So
Um,
how old are you? All we want to know is how old are you
okay,
when you go to the?
from what I understand, okay, what happened was,
I don't want to know what happened. Just how old were
okay,
you?
okay, I was an infant when they brought me
Okay,
home.
that's
Okay, well,
okay.
now I was 1 years old when she dropped me off at my mom's house.
Okay.
So I was living at my mom's
Yeah.
house with her, and then she moved out, and then Paul was messing around, and she got mad, and broke up with him.
Okay.
Okay, so I was 1 years old. She brought
Yeah.
me back to Paul's mom's house, and she was pregnant of my brother Mario. So she disappeared for a while, and so I was being raised by Paul's mom.
Okay.
Okay, and now what happened was, she had gotten into some trouble with her grandma. She had moved back home. I don't even know if her grandma knew she was pregnant. She stole some money from her, and her grandma wanted to make an example out of her and press charges. So she ended up in jail, and she had my brother Mario in jail. And from what my mom told me, that raised me,
Hmm.
that they went over there and picked Mario up, and brought him home. So me and Mario ended up with Paul's mom.
Got it.
Okay, and that's my mom that raised us.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
okay. So now let me move away from this because I want to go. So now we've established where you ended up there when you were an infant. Now I want to go back to that time when you found out that okay. So now you're starting to see some resemblance. You guys do this ancestry thing.
yeah,
All this is unraveling.
yeah.
And then your son's just freaking peckering away at just showing you more and more stuff.
Yeah.
Who decides? Let's reach out to them. Did you give them permission? Did you say, "Hey,
Well,
was it your idea? Was it his idea? What?"
well, he finally convinced me to order a couple of DNA tests.
Okay, so you ordered. Okay,
And so I ordered two, and I said, well, I'm going to submit mine first and see what the results are.
okay,
And then I'm going to go to Paul and say, hey, I need your sample.
okay. So
You
you
know,
order yours.
I ordered both.
You both. Okay,
But one night I was like, you know what, son? Forget about waiting for my results. I need to go get his.
okay,
And so we drove the next day out to the desert, about an hour and 20-minute drive. He lives in Pear Blossom. And I pulled up, and he goes, oh, what do honk the horn. He comes out. He goes, what brings you here? I said, oh, I haven't seen you in a long time. And I said, and then I got a question for you. So he opens up the gate. We were
and
out.
this is a dad that was never in your life that you thought was your dad.
Right,
Okay,
right.
perfect.
So I asked him, I said, you ever heard of anybody named Chandler? Like, have you heard the name Chandler before? And he put his head down. Yeah, it's been 60 years. And right off the bat, I knew. I said, well, listen. I said, Christian did DNA and ancestry, and so all these Chandlers, no Sanchez's there. So I ordered this DNA kit, and I want you to give me a sample. And he's looked at me, and I said, listen, I'm 61 going on 62. I need to know what the hell's going on. He goes, oh, I don't blame you. Well, I got to ask my wife. So we go. He opens up his garage. He opens the door and asks for his wife to come out into the garage.
Did he do it?
Huh?
Did he do the test?
Well, he did it,
Okay,
but he was hesitant. He didn't want to do
but
it.
he did it.
He did it. And then he started confessing that he didn't think Mario was the son, and on and on and on. So, well, we'll find out. So a couple of weeks later, I get my results. I told him I would call him, let him know, and I called him up. I said, well, I'm
You're not my dad.
yes.
He's not your daddy.
Okay, gotta go. Bye. I said, hold on a minute. Mario's your son. No, he's not. No, I don't believe it. I said, well, he is. And I said, I got a few questions to ask you. He goes, what is it? And I said, well, did you know I was born at St. Anne's maternity home and they're going to give me up for adoption? No, I didn't know that. I got to go by. Hold on a minute. I said, who brought me home? I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know. I got to go. Oh, wait. One more question. I said, how long were you with Virginia? I don't know, a couple of months. I said, that's bullshit. I said, Mario was born, a year later. I don't know. I got to go. I said, all right, bye. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. I saw him at a funeral, and I went up to him, shook his hand, hugged him, and I asked him, "Are you okay?" And yeah. And he didn't want to have nothing to do with me. He just walked away. The guy, was trying to run. He's an old guy, and he almost fell off the curb, so I backed off. And then his wife, I went and talked tried to talk to her, and she really didn't want to talk to me. Okay.
So they just want that chapter closed.
Yeah.
But he
So
was never around, so really,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So it is what it
So
is.
now here's the question. So now you get this confirmation, you've got these extra DNA tests, you know that the Chandler is probably your father. Who decides to reach out? How did you reach out to the dad?
Oh, okay.
What
So
happened?
I was I was looked. I kind of realized he was like 82 years old, and
So did you call him?
no, I didn't
Did you
call him.
email?
I didn't. I don't want to,
So who
shock the
did?
guy and
So who did?
cause him to have a heart attack or anything. So what I did is, Carmen. I saw her email address, her work email address. So I just decided to send her an email.
You sent an email.
I sent the email.
What's up, sis?
No, no, it
Okay.
was like more like introducing myself. I believe we share the same biological father. If you want to, reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to
How long did she take
talk.
to respond?
Well, she didn't. A couple of days went by, and what I decided to do was send her a couple of photos of me. And like 2 hours after that, I get a call,
Wow.
and it's her husband. And starts asking me all these questions. And I said, his name is Malcolm Vanolia. And I said, well, I got to ask you a few questions. I said, you an attorney? He started laughing because, yes, I am. How'd you know? I said, well, I dealt with quite a few of them at work. And he laughed. And so anyways, he's asking a bunch of questions. And I found out later he did a background search, or not search, but investigation
Yeah.
to see who kind of person I was and everything. Anyways, so
So you guys have that connection, and then when did you guys? And then the others, because you have other brothers and sisters. How did they come into the picture? So now you've made this
okay,
initial connection.
so then,
Did you guys meet?
well, what happened was, Carmen gave them my email, and then little by little, they started emailing me,
Okay.
introducing themselves, sending pictures of their kids, their wives, and Martin did
So now
was
they
the first one
realize that you're not just some crazy guy.
yeah,
Just
right, right.
okay.
But from what I understand, that Carmen kind of freaked out, and she had a Facebook conversation with is that what it is? Yeah,
Yeah, phrase
with the
brothers and
with the
sisters.
brothers and sisters, and and so then they all kind of like, well, these are brothers. Let's start reaching out to them, and so little by little they all started reaching out, and um, then Carmen reached out to me, and then one of my sisters lived close by in San Dimas. I called her, and we went out, had coffee together at Starbucks. Got there like 5 o'clock and closed it down like 8 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And so I know she was, it was her name Ramona, and she was really nervous and everything. And we talk about that all the time. We joke about it. But so Ramona was the very first one that I actually was able to sit down with and talk to. And she asked me for a photo of my biological mother. So I gave her the photo, and then she flew to Jackson, Mississippi, where my father lives, along with my brother Andy. They met him there. It was New Year's, and they had dinner. And so they said, "Do you know this woman?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's Virginia." He called her Virgie. He goes, "Well, we believe you have another son." And he goes, "No, that sounds about right." He goes, "I thought it was a girl." And then why would you think it was a girl? Well, because his first marriage, he had 3 daughters. So he figured, you know, he suspected that I was his child when she was pregnant,
Yeah.
but she said no. So he moved on. But so he thought all along maybe it was a girl, but now he finds out it's a boy. So they call me after dinner. They get home, and they call me. So now I'm on the phone with my father, and I say, "Hey, pops," and he's laughing and stuff. And he was really 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 nice with me, and you know Andy, my brother, says hello on the phone, and then he's married again.
So
Late in
they've
the-
accepted you.
Hmm?
They've accepted you with open arms.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, they accepted me, and then a couple of months later, I flew out there for his birthday. It was March 16th is his birthday,
Wow.
and that's where I met him. He picked me up at Jackson Airport in Mississippi, and that's when I first met him. Melody went with us and Christian, and they filmed it, and I looked at, I knew
Oh, we'll
right,
have to grab a little bit of that film and
yeah, right off the
put it.
bat, I knew he was my father. I mean, looking at him and everything, oh my God, same hair, same forehead, same everything. Like, oh my God, like he spit me out.
So it's like overnight you just
Yeah,
reconnected with the family
yeah,
that
yeah. And
wow.
and then at that time, my two brothers, Martin and uh, and Andy, flew out to meet me too. So they were there, and so went to his house and we sat down, and we're just sharing my life stories with them, and you know and so I spent a lot of time with my brothers. Went and had some beer and stuff, and you know meals. We shared meals together, and we had a good time. Then we went to a restaurant, celebrated my father's 82nd birthday at that time, and it was real nice. And then when we were there, his wife, Patricia Ice, insisted that we take a paternity test, because I don't think she was too
So
convinced.
did you take one?
Yes, we did.
And how
Yeah,
did
I
it come
did.
up?
Bill and I,
There you go.
99.9999997%. And so when I got the results and he got his results, we shared them on we would text each other
Yeah.
and everything, and all the siblings were happy about that, and calling me bro and all that stuff, and so it was nice, and so it's been what, 2.5
2.5
years,
years.
and I've gone to Mississippi 3 times.
Wow.
We went this past March, and so now we kind of adjusted the dates that we go. Instead of the 16th, we wait till that weekend, which is St. Patrick's Day,
Mm,
and they have a big celebration over there, big parade. So we go over there and we hang out, we drink, we eat, and we have a good time. We share
nice.
Airbnbs, and it's really, really cool. And then of
Wow.
course, we celebrate my dad's birthday, which is it's belated birthday, but we
Yeah.
do, yeah.
And it's great that this one worked out because a lot of times, sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I was shocked and surprised, that it did. I mean, they all embraced me.
because a lot of jealousy could kick in. I mean, there's so many different ways it can go. But let me ask you a question. How did this new unraveling, how did it impact the family that you thought you were?
Well,
So
unfortunately, over the years, there's a lot of issues that went on with my family, and some of them
so how are you
stopped
guys
communicating with
how are
me.
you guys today? Like once this
Well,
unraveled, are you guys talking,
no,
not
no one
talking?
talks to me anymore,
Okay.
and
So even though the new family embraced you, the family that you grew up with just kind of
yeah, we kind
shut
of all
down.
went our ways.
Okay.
The ones that are really close with, they passed.
Okay.
There was a lot of personal issues that drove wedges between all of us.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the last one that I was, had a good relationship with my sister Andy, but for some reason, you know, I don't know if the news of me finding out that I'm a Chandler had anything to do with it, but there's no more communication.
Do you
I,
think you'll ever
that stopped about a year ago, and but I think there was a lot of concern on their part that I was changing my name, which I did recently,
Yeah,
about
tell
two
me tell
weeks
me
ago.
about that. So what made you decide
Uh,
to now change your name to you went all in. You went
yeah,
all in.
and so first of all, I will always be a Sanchez at heart, but I'm a Chandler, and I want my grandkids to have the right identity. I want my son to have the right name, right? And so I did it. I did it for that reason, and also, like I said, my family, my Chandler family, embraced me, and uh, you know, I wanted to be part of them too. And so we did. My son and I, we went about 3 weeks ago. We had a court date, and so the judge granted it, and then so we've been, gradually changing. I just got my new Social Security card, and it's Alphonso Sanchez Chandler. Now, I kept Sanchez as my middle name. I never had a middle name. My birth name was Alfonso Sanchez. Okay, so because I'm a Sanchez, but I'm a Chandler, so Alfonso Middle name Sanchez. Chandler's my last
So
name.
little birdie at the courthouse told me that you had a little something pending in the court that
Yeah.
almost caused you to take a little trip.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
want to
What
share
happened?
that?
What happened when the judge says, "Well, there's a couple of hurdles I got to get through first, or you got to get through first." And what's that? He, well, first of all, did you pay for this? Oh yeah, I have the receipt right here. Okay, that's not a problem. He says. The other thing is, we did a background check on you,
Oh shit! Here it
and
comes.
it seems that you were a bad boy at one time. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh. And he goes, you have a history of fighting and resisting arrest. He goes, well, that charge was dropped and this charge. And I'm like, oh. And he goes, well, last one was 1998. And he says, have you gotten in any trouble lately? No, no. And he goes, okay. He goes, I'm going to grant this. He goes, let me be the first to congratulate you, Mr. Chandler.
Wow.
And so that was it, and that was cool. But it's funny because I was in Mississippi in March, and someone stole my phone. I got in a little scuffle over there, and I'm thinking, oh, imagine if I would have went to jail, man. They probably wouldn't have granted
Probably would have
me
granted
my
it.
new last name, And
Yeah.
thank God I didn't go to jail. But, anyways, I was thinking, oh shit, did they find out about that incident in Mississippi?
How funny. So, as we start to close out this episode, which has been a powerful one, just kind of sharing not only your story, but just to one day find out that everything you grew up believing
Yeah,
just kind of changed. What would be your advice to maybe families that are going through this right now? Because yours was a lot easier than some of the others that I've had conversations with where people it's really put a wedge on both sides.
yeah.
Not only the new family they discovered, but the old one. And
You know what I would say is do what makes you happy.
mm,
Don't try to please anybody else. Do what's right, what you feel in your heart, and so I'm doing that.
love that. And there you go. There's a wrap of episode 60 of Fatherhood Voices with Alfonso Sanchez Chandler.